Hi, everybody. I'm Kay Helm, and this is the Your Voice podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world. Each week, I interview someone about the way in which they live or tell their story. And this week, my guest is Tami Romani. Chances are you've heard Tami's voice before in commercials or perhaps on an audiobook. Today, we are literally talking about finding your voice. With years of experience as a voice actor, Tami is a brand voice strategist and a business communication consultant. Tami, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Kay. I'm delighted to be here, and I love that you said we are literally talking about the voice.
Yes, and so you're a voice actor. What does a voice actor do?
You know, it's funny how often I get that question because it's something you are exposed to every single day. Mm-hmm. If you listen to radio, even Pandora, you hear a commercial, and that is a voiceover. We call ourselves different things: voice actor, voiceover talent, voiceover artist, voiceover person, whatever. It all means the same thing. We are actors, but all you hear is our voice. You're not seeing us. And so it encompasses so much, especially with the internet now. It encompasses audiobooks, any kind of explainer video that you might see on YouTube or on a website, animation. I have a lot of friends who do cartoon voices.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so all of that, we are exposed to it every day, but until you hear the term voice actor, you just don't even know we exist. It's one of those subliminal things that's just kind of out there.
I used to work in television, and I used to make commercials, and we did intros to shows, things like that. And I was in the editing suite. That was my part, or I was working camera, that kind of thing. But the voiceover talent is so important. It's important to have the right person, the right tone, the right script to match the way they have to deliver it a certain way, and it really is a lot that goes into it.
You know, it's interesting that you said that. That is something that a lot of people know, but now there are actual studies to prove how important the voice is, and that's something new in the last year or so. Yale School of Business did a study, and there's another study that came out of the UK at University of Glasgow. So we've now got scientific evidence to prove how important the voice is, and I love that. That makes me happy.
Tell us a little bit about the other things that we have here. Your brand voice strategist and business communication consultant. Tell us what you're doing there.
Well, what that means is basically I help people unlock their authentic voice for their business. Now, that can mean the physicality of their voice. I actually had a private coaching client the other day who is in a very specific area of business, and he's a professional, and he helps other professionals in his field market themselves online, but he was not feeling heard. And within 15 minutes of working with him, I was so thrilled because he actually had a bolder presence and he sounded more authoritative. So when I say brand voice strategist, I want to say that it is actually working on what your voice sounds like, because we now know that everyone has a pet peeve that they cannot listen to.
Yes.
Right? I'll go off on a bit of a tangent here. I recently posted on my social media the question, what is a vocal quality or lack thereof, or a speech habit that you absolutely cannot listen to and makes you tune out? Automatically, you turn this person off. And boy, it was one of the most engaged posts I'd ever had in a long time. And everyone has a pet peeve.
Yes.
And they answered, I cannot stand it when it's too sing-songy, or monotone was just as bad. Mm-hmm. Vocal fry, I hate it when, and vocal fry, I'll illustrate. Vocal fry is when there's just this really raspy kind of like that. And it's something that a lot of celebrities do, a lot of young women do. It's very annoying to listen to. As you can tell, you sound like you need a nap.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Basically.
And it sounds like something learned, too, like somebody trying to affect something.
I believe it. Part of it is subliminal, and I believe it is learned, and it can be unlearned.
Oh, that's good
Other
news.
people said things like using filler words.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we need to learn is how powerful the pause is. Just blank air for a second to let people gather their thoughts and lean into what you're about to say next. If you fill that with a sound or a word, like, or a phrase. Some people say, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Or you get what I'm saying? Some people insert just they're uncomfortable with blank space. And blank space is what really makes your listener lean in and hear you. Anyway, all that to say, the list goes on and on and on. Everyone, do you have a pet peeve that you cannot listen to?
Well, right now, I'm very critical of things that I've found myself doing since starting the podcast, and it's been the filler words.
Okay.
What I discovered was that I would work on getting rid of one filler word, and I would end up putting another one in.
Oh, that you're not alone. And you know, it's okay to use them now and then.
Okay.
It's okay to say like once, but do not say it every sixth word.
Yes.
And I actually had to turn off a big influencer the other day. He was giving some really good information about some software to use for live streaming. And I could not listen to him because every sixth word was and
no.
I'm sure he didn't know it. And I don't know how he got to the position he was in as an influencer with so many followers because I just couldn't do it. So that's one of my pet peeves as well. And for me, vocal fry. I will turn off a podcast. It's interesting though, but just like appearance, voice is very personal. So
Yes.
My pet peeves are different than yours. I might be able to listen to a podcast and go, oh, that was the greatest podcast. And someone else will listen to it and say, I couldn't get past that voice. So it's a very personal preference thing. So that's why there's so many of us doing the same thing. Right? And
That's
you, I'm sure,
true.
talk about that a lot when you talk about finding your voice. And I'm
Yes.
sure an objection you hear is, but there's other people doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Right?
Always.
And I say, but they don't sound like you.
True.
Those other people, there are some very famous people that I cannot listen to because of their voice. Maybe I can listen to you saying the same thing. So I would just encourage your listeners to just go for it. Find your voice, work on your personal voice, your actual voice, your physical voice, and then find your voice like you tell people to do every week.
Yeah. Let's talk about the voice. And you spoke, I think you called it the physicality of your voice. So what is that? And we have this, our vocal cords, that's a part of our body. We have to take care of it. I think singers, more than anybody, probably understand that. Anybody that's been in choir class or sings regularly or speaks regularly has more of an understanding, and they're trying to take care of it. But what are some things we can do?
You are born with a certain amount of how your voice naturally sounds, but you can make tweaks to that. And you can also do damage to that. So we do talk a lot about self-care, how to take care of your voice. And when I talk about the physicality of your voice, the most important thing is to, first of all, I have people do a self-assessment where they turn on something they've done, whether it be a live stream or a presentation, or maybe even just videotape themselves on their phone or just record themselves on their sound recorder. And I have them turn their phone over and just listen to it. Don't watch yourself because you will pick out that hair that's out of place and wonder why you move your mouth that way when you speak. So I ask people to listen and listen for all the things that bother you in a speaker. Maybe put a list in front of you, things to listen for. You mentioned, Kay, that you hear yourself using filler words. Well, now you're aware of that.
Right.
So self-awareness is the first key. Listen for if you use those filler words. Listen for if you're gasping for air. Listen if you sound very monotone or bored. Listen for if you have too high-pitched a voice or you just lack power in your voice. So when I talk about the physicality of speaking, I talk about mostly breathing, because breathing is the foundation for all great speech. It's the most important thing. And the very first thing I have people do is get out the stopwatch on their phone, the clock, and turn it on stopwatch and take a normal breath and exhale on an ah sound, just in their mid-range. So just start the timer ah for as long as you can go on whatever your normal breath is. And see where your voice begins to crack, where you lose air, and where you absolutely, completely, your voice fails. Now, I find that some people's voice begins to crack already at 4 seconds.
Wow.
Some people lose air at 10 seconds, completely. Well, the average sentence is 10 to 12 seconds long. So you want to at least be able to get through a sentence before you are, and you don't ever want to gasp. So you don't want to lose. You lose the last word in your sentence if you have no air left. It will either go into a vocal fry, or it will you're just barely pushing it out. So you just have no force, no authority. So, and that changes how people perceive you in your message that you're trying to get across.
Yes. That's something in some talking that I was doing, some public speaking, that was one of the critiques, was I trailed off at the end of the sentence.
I would say you need to work on your breathing. That would be the first thing. Almost everything that is a pet peeve of most people can be fixed with proper breathing. So I really find that's something I work the most with people on, because it's interesting. We've been breathing our whole lives, right?
Yes.
We don't think about it. We don't want to think about it.
Right.
And I ask people to overthink it for a couple of months until a new way of breathing becomes second nature. And then you don't have to think about it again. I don't think about it anymore. But, close to 40 years ago, I was in a course in college that changed my life. And it was a speech technique class, had nothing to do with getting in front of the class and giving an actual speech, had nothing to do with content. It was all technique. Wow. And it was brilliant. And I am so happy that I took that course, because one of my biggest memories from that is the instructor took us to the football stadium and he had us climb to the top of the bleachers, and he stood in the center at the 50-yard line in the center of the field.
I'm imagining that. Wow.
And he had us speak so he could hear us.
Wow.
Without yelling. No yelling allowed. It was all how we were breathing. And I remember, at 19 years old, being one of the few people who could do that.
Wow.
So that really impacted me. And I didn't really realize it until just a few years ago, how much that one class set a tone for the rest of my life.
It affects how people interpret what you're saying. Like the trailing off at the end of the sentence. That doesn't come across to most people as, oh, she's short of breath. It comes across as she's not sure about what she's saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So fixing your breathing is the very first thing that you can do. And that comes from practice, daily practice of taking. I have some exercises. I actually have something that your listeners can go to. It's TamiRomani.com/breathe. And that will get you to just a simple document that is 4 steps you can breathe your way to a stronger voice. And it will give you some simple exercises. And then, reach out to me if you want more help after that. But I think that's a good place to start, because it really is the foundation.
And that link will be in the show notes too for anybody listening.
Oh, fantastic.
So, well, if somebody's not a professional speaker, how important is it for them to develop their voice?
Well, I had a client the other day who told me that his kids don't hear him. So you tell me, are your kids constantly saying, what? Or are you wanting to move up the corporate ladder? You don't have to be a business owner needing to promote your self on social media, although that is probably who I work with the most. And that's the people that have reached out to me the most are those who are authors and people in different areas of business and are realizing that this is how promotion is done now, is you do have to turn the camera on yourself and be the voice of your own brand. And by brand, I mean yourself. You are your brand, right? So
Yes.
voicing your brand means turning that camera on yourself and being that voice. Now, I also do teach people that there's a time to hire a pro as well. I don't recommend that people do their own narration for an explainer video because you want it to be heard and you don't want people to think about the voice. And if you are not professionally trained, of course, when you are in business, they need to see your face and you have to be your own voice there. But there's a time and place for everything. But I think it's just so important for anyone in business, anyone with a job. Okay, I just thought of a great example.
Great.
I was at Disneyland a couple weeks ago, and we were about to board Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And if you have never been to Disney, that ride is a boat that comes and you get on one side and you offload on the other side. And so it's a very narrow channel. And like any amusement park, the people that work there, they call them cast members at Disney, but they're basically people wranglers, right?
Yes.
They just say, how many in your party? 5. Okay, 5. You go here, you go there. And I stood there and watched. I had a little extra time because we had my 3-year-old grandson with us, and he needed a potty break right as we got to the front of the line.
Of course.
So my son took him off, and we stood there, and I just watched this one young lady, and she was brilliant. She was the best crowd wrangler I've ever seen on a ride anywhere. And she was like, 2, okay, 2, you go here, you go there. And then I witnessed her calling across the water across the boat to the employee who was offloading people because he had asked her, how come people are hearing you? It's a noisy place in there. There's music going, the boats are moving, there's noise from that. There's a restaurant right there, so there's people talking. And he said, how are people hearing? So she just did not shout. She said, you just have to talk from your diaphragm so people can hear you. And she was forceful, and I just looked at her and said, oh my gosh, you are my hero right now.
Yeah.
I said, this is what I do. I teach people how to be heard. And I said, you are doing everything right. No one else says what to her. No one said that. No one missed what she was saying. She was so much more efficient for the company in getting people on the rides because everyone heard her.
Yes.
And she just shrugged her shoulders and said, I guess it's all those years of choir training I had. You know, she probably was a college student. She looked to be maybe 22. And I said, yes, but here's the thing. Not everyone has the vocal training that singing in a choir in high school gets you.
Right.
But we all need that. In her job, think about it. If that was part of her training, she wouldn't have to be telling her coworker how to do it.
True.
They would all have that newfound authority.
Right.
They would be able to be heard. So what I want to say is this is something everyone can use because it sets you apart from other people at work. It may get you a promotion faster because you just carry yourself differently when you are being heard and when people are not asking you, what'd you say? Or can you speak up? Or what was that last word? Nothing gets lost.
And it's so frustrating when you have to repeat yourself over and over and over again. And that affects all kinds of things. And for your listeners, too, when they have to ask what, and when they have to stand there confused because they didn't catch everything.
And for one, I hate asking that because I know how it makes people feel. I'm so sorry. Can you just repeat that sentence again? I didn't hear the end of it. How many times have we said that to people?
Yes.
So I don't care if you work at a drive-through at Starbucks or, McDonald's, you need some kind of strength in your voice and you'll get noticed. You'll
Mm-hmm.
get that promotion faster than someone who doesn't have that. If you work in a company structure, I saw someone comment the other day that they were at a room full of vice presidents in a big
Mm-hmm.
corporation. And this one gal said, well, how will I know who the vice presidents are? And he said, oh, you'll know by how they speak.
Mm.
There's not a head of a company anywhere who hasn't had some kind of vocal training to make them sound more confident and have a better presence. So I would say to anyone climbing the ladder or
Mm-hmm.
having your own business, getting your voice right is so important. I find that so many people don't do what they feel called to do because they're
Yes.
afraid people won't like their voice. So there is a bit of self-awareness where, ooh, I don't really like my voice, so I'm sure others won't. Well, let's fix that. It's very simple. And it really starts with breathing properly.
And I think that's such a good thing to know that yes, you just because your voice sounds a certain way or you have certain things that you're doing in your speech, that doesn't mean that it won't change or can't change.
Absolutely. And if you have little things like you say like once in a
Mm-hmm.
while, or you say dude, or you say something silly, that's part of your personality.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't teach people to clean up your speech so much that you have no personality left. You be you, but let's take care of the quirky things that are repetitive so that they become a hindrance to your message.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime as a listener, anytime someone needs to, well, okay, they're not even thinking about it actually. Let's just say they're not aware that a certain type of vocal pattern bothers them. But you repeatedly say or you say like, or you clear your throat all the time, or you take a gasp for air.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that interrupts the listener's flow of your message makes them stop. It abruptly stops them from hearing the rest of your sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a sentence and then you like that, or even you have a smacking sound or something, it subconsciously turns off the listener's focus to what
Mm-hmm.
your message is.
Right.
So what I try and tell people is think about that. Make sure you take a good deep breath and you let the air carry your sound. So you've got to have, it's a muscle, just like working out anything else. Your diaphragm is a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You need to work that out so that you get your lungs filled with air that can carry the sound so that you're not losing people at the end of your sentence, or so that you're not gasping for air because it makes them stop and think.
Yeah.
And how much better it would be if you are saying a really important sentence and you needed a little breath. You just stop and pause like that. It makes people lean in and listen for what you are about to launch into. But if I had inserted a gasp or a smack or
Mm-hmm.
a like or an I would lose people.
Yes.
So there's power in that pause if you don't insert it with a sound. There's power in a blank pause. It makes people perk up and lean into what you're about to say.
And with the breathing, things like posture, things like drinking enough water for the mouth sounds when it's something, again, I noticed editing. In the editing process, I was constantly cutting out the little, especially just before speaking, constantly these little tiny edits. But drinking more water fixes that.
It does. And isn't that interesting? And it's not always drinking water while you're speaking.
Mm-mm.
It's just your entire body needs to be hydrated. And that's for our health anyway. But it does affect your voice and your speech.
Yeah.
You know what they say, drink half of your weight in ounces every day
Right.
is a goal, or even start with 75 ounces. Let's say you have three 25-ounce bottles. That's what I have. I have three
Mm-hmm.
25-ounce bottles. I fill them all up. At the end of the day, they better be empty.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal. And then, anything extra over that, tea is also good, but you do need to consistently drink water because your whole body will feel it, but it will come out in your sound.
Just a little tip too. I found that when I drink water, if I drink from a larger bottle, I drink more easily and faster during the day. It's
Yes.
not such a struggle.
You don't have to stop and remember to fill it up
Right.
because you don't feel thirsty. I know when I finish a bottle, I think, oh, okay, I'm done with that one. And then I don't go fill it up,
Right.
right? Yeah. So water is very important. Having something soothing for yourself. Tea is good if you're feeling especially tired, your throat is tired. Let me just tell you another thing breathing does is
Yeah.
it helps to relax the tension in your throat. So if you've ever heard somebody who's breathing very shallow, their voice might feel very tight and high.
Mm-hmm.
And breathing deeper relaxes the larynx and it gives you a fuller sound. And it will, you know what? I could illustrate this. I want it to, everybody close your eyes.
Okay.
Put one hand on your chest, like just below your clavicle area or your neck area, and one hand on your stomach, like right at your rib cage, like over your stomach area. That's where your diaphragm is. And just take your normal breath. And think about which hand is rising. Which hand is rising for you, Kay? Is it the one on your stomach or the one on your chest?
Well, the one on my stomach actually was.
Okay, that's what it should be. That means you're breathing deeper into your lungs. Now, people who have told me, oh, my hand on my chest is rising, often their shoulders are rising also. They're just taking in a very shallow breath and not taking enough air into their lungs to even oxygenate their body, their brain. Your brain will feel clearer when you start breathing deeper because it's like drinking enough water for your whole body and it helps your voice. Breathing properly helps your whole body and your voice. So if you just, let me illustrate.
Yeah.
I hope I can do this. I've been breathing deep for so long that I struggle to try and illustrate the other way, but I think you can hear the difference. Okay. So I just took a shallow breath in my chest area, and that's as loud as I can go right now. This is as loud. Do you hear how thin and weak my voice sounds? That is taking a very shallow breath right into my chest area, top of my lungs. That's all I've got. I even have a little bit of raspiness at the end because I can't push out any more air. Now I've just taken a breath into my deep part of my lungs through my diaphragm. My stomach has expanded, and I have enough air to push out a good 15 or 20-second sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you hear the difference?
Yes, there's a big difference.
Yeah. And I think everybody can do that. And it takes just closing your eyes and really concentrating. Where am I breathing now? What does it feel like? Take a deep breath and just think about filling your lungs up from the bottom all the way up and just see what that feels like. Then start with exhaling sound. So maybe you just take a good deep breath and exhale like you're a ball losing air. And that will get you into the practice of breathing deep and exhaling sound. Then you move to exhale that first sentence, like your introduction, your elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Take maybe 2-3 good deep breaths, and then take that last breath and don't exhale and then speak. That will make you lose air.
Yes.
Practice taking that breath through your nose if possible, because it's less noisy when you're speaking, and then exhale your words. And you'll see a difference in a matter of 15 minutes. It's just the process of practicing it that needs work. Like anything.
Yes. Yes.
Practice makes progress, I like to say.
Well, that's good. I like that better than the one we all learned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is the goal. I'm drinking
Yeah.
tea. Sorry if I just swallowed. My neighbor brought me some oolong tea from Taiwan, and it's really good.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, what about those special teas you see in the store, throat coat and other? Are they really good for your
They
voice?
are. They are because they have a special blend of herbs that they know are very good for your voice.
Hmm.
I throat coat is a good one.
Hmm.
It's a very popular one, and I think there's one. I think Yogi Teas makes a good one that has some lemon in it, and it's a throat. That one I like the taste of a little bit better. That throat coat has a lot of stuff in it, but boy, if you have a sore throat at all, or you really feel like you need help, it's very good. It's very good. Very medicinal.
I carry that when I travel.
Yes. Yes, there are all kinds of tips and tricks of little things. I also found something the other day. It's from, I think I got it at Sprouts Market. It is just a bottle of hyaluronic acid. It's called Hyla and it helps with dry mouth.
Oh, great.
So if you're starting to feel very dry, it just kind of gives you a
Hmm.
little bit of coating in there. I also have a friend who creates a blend of essential oils and mixes it with a little bit of sterile water and puts it in a spray bottle. And I usually have that with me. There's just a lot of different tips. Oh, let me tell you the one
Hmm.
when you said you had the smacking sound,
Hmm.
a green apple.
Green apple.
Green apple. And I really need to research this before I talk about it, but I don't know why it works, but it's a very long-standing announcer trick. Most announcers in their booth will have a green apple with them.
Oh, wow.
And it just does something to neutralize everything, and it makes you have less mouth clicks and those weird dry mouth sounds. So green apple, have one on hand, and don't chew it on mic.
Yes. That would ruin it all.
Yeah, but if anyone has a speaking gig or something, you will often see in a green room a bowl of green apples, and that's why they're there. Little voiceover trick for you.
Okay, Tammy, we talked earlier a little, we just mentioned it, and I want to come back to the things that we do when we're speaking, these little habits that we have and how they affect the way that people perceive us. You mentioned some studies.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really remarkable that this hasn't been done sooner. But in 2014, there was a study at the University of Glasgow in the UK showing very consistent results. And it's interesting to me because what they did was they had some participants come in and record a paragraph.
Hmm.
And that paragraph included the word hello. Well, then they edited out everything they recorded and just extracted that word hello and played that for their study group. And I forget how many people they had in this, but the key takeaway from this was that just based on that one word, hello, the people made judgments about whether the person was trustworthy, believable, whether they were someone that they would want to know, whether they were perhaps a criminal, all of these things. And it didn't matter that their assessment was true or not. What mattered was it was consistent.
Wow.
So you know that very famous phrase from the movie Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello.
It
They
really is true.
It really is true. And I'll tell you what that has debunked is it's widely accepted among business groups that you have 7 seconds to make a first impression. But this study proves that once you open your mouth, people judge you almost immediately.
Oh, my goodness.
And they're actually calling it the Jerry Maguire effect because you had me at hello is really a thing. So that would be the first one that blew me away
Wow.
when I read it. I thought, oh my word. You know, we think about how we spend so much time on our appearance when we're at a networking event or how we carry ourselves. We think we overthink it. And what we don't understand is we might make that great first impression from across the room, but once you start speaking to people, you had me at hello.
Mm.
So it really, really is important. And then another study came out of Yale, and this was published just in the fall of 2017, I believe.
Really
It
recent.
concluded, very recent. It was in their business school, and they concluded that voice-only communication will communicate emotions better than any other form of communication. So what they concluded, and they did 5 separate studies, 5 different groups of people, 5 very different techniques, and they came to the same conclusion that people who heard voice only were better able to, what they called it enhanced their empathic understanding. So if you had a message you needed to get across, it's more believable through voice-only communication. This is why podcasts are gaining in popularity so much rather than watching video. Video is important, but we have learned to mask so much in our appearance and how we carry ourselves and in our facial expressions and our body language, that what this study showed is that voice-only communication far outweighs body language, facial expression, or any other visual means of communication in expressing empathic understanding.
Wow.
So
I would have thought that it would have been, being able to see somebody's face would be a key.
Yeah, and they really attribute that to the skill that we have all developed of masking ourselves and pretending. But apparently the voice is not as good at pretending. You know how you hear vocal tension? If you close your eyes and listen to a lot of people speak, you can hear if they're nervous, if they've got something else on their mind, if they're distracted. You can hear that.
Yes.
So if you can hear it in others, for sure others can hear it in you.
That's true. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's an amazing study.
Yeah. They both are very remarkable. They're both very different, but they really illustrate the power of the voice and how important it is to just put yourself out there in such a way that you show confidence through how you sound. And if you don't like the sound of your voice, there are things you can do to take care of that. And often, to be honest, you are just fine. But you need to hear that from someone else. So, if you do have the filler words thing or the breathing wrong thing, that's a simple fix. But you just need to do it. You just need to step out in boldness and do it.
That's great. Yes.
Yeah.
Tami, thank you for that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome so much. I enjoyed it immensely, Kay. And just tell your listeners to reach out to me anytime. I'm at Tami Romani, TamiRomani, on every single social media platform, and TamiRomani.com if they want to know more.
Great.
I have some introductory stuff, some free stuff, and they can get some tips that way, or we can do private coaching, whatever they like. It's often things that can be fixed within an hour, as long as they will do the work and follow up and practice a bit.
That's always needed.
And that's what it takes. Yeah.
And again, we'll have the link, TamiRomani.com. And if you put a / and breathe behind that, you can get the free guide to breathing better, which is a huge key, as we've learned today.
It is the foundation for all great speech.
There you go.
The foundation. Yep.
So that's there. And I know you have some great stuff on your blog as well.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed this, Kay. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks, Tami. Make sure you check out the show notes at yourvoicepodcast.com. All the links we talked about are there. Please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Kay Helm. Until next week, this is the Your Voice Podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world.